lesson now, um, and we have with us. Oh, okay. And let me just silence my phone, which everyone else should. And let me just share this. But we are live on YouTube, so we are recording. And today we're talking about death in Judaism, the end. It's not because death is the end. It's because this is our the end of our sessions of life cycles. Okay, I think this is our 10th lesson, and today is going to be the concluding lesson, including the concluding one on death. And we're going to deal with the following issues. Kohanim, priests and funerals, cremation, and disinterment, above ground burial, which is mainly mausoleums, autopsies and organ donations, suicide, and burial of non-Jewish spouses. And last week we did everything that has to do with the Shiva and the Shloshim, the 30th day, and the year, and the Yortzeit, and Yiskor, and all these things. I really encourage those who were not here to watch it on YouTube. It's all our lessons are on the YouTube channel. They're recorded there from already last year. So anyone that wants to learn more about Judaism, and I'm also saying this for the video because people who might just encounter this recording, I encourage you to go and see these videos that not just go more in depth into what Judaism has to say about these topics, also what conservative Judaism has to say, which is our branch of Judaism here and Rancho Palos Verdes. Okay, so so basically what we're talking today about is all the less usual cases, although they occur all the time, so they need to be addressed. And Judaism has a point of view on any of these. So the first one is priests and funeral, and I'm always referring to this book here. Do you see my photo here? Let's wait. I just want to make sure because I see like I'm not. Yeah, like now I see. No one told me, but they don't really see my camera, or maybe they do. Isn't that weird? Where's my photo?
It's audio.
Yeah, so this is a video.
Turns it off.
Now I turn. Yeah, I know, but it's not.
What is the arrow next to the video?
No,
down below in the left corner.
I know, but yeah, integrated camera.
Okay.
Or this camera. Blur my background. Well, I didn't have that. I've never had that. That's really weird. And here as well. Oh, there you go. And we have okay. So I guess it has my camera, but it's just not.
That's not current. Past.
I'm not.
It's delayed.
No. It's delayed. It's really weird.
We control the vertical.
Use speaker, multi-speaker, multi-speaker, immersive. No, we don't want immersive.
I'm getting the hospital.
That is really weird. We've never seen that. Okay. We'll just have to. Do you see me on Zoom, people? On the Zoom, can you see me? Please, please unmute yourself and let us know. Okay, you can see me. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so you can see this book then. This is the observant life that we've been sort of like following. And now just let me know on Zoom if you could see me and the screen I'm sharing. Did you see both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rabbi,
Perfect. Yes.
Have you ever used the Kaplan book?
The Kaplan book, no. Okay, so, Kohanim, generally speaking, our tradition considers it a mitzvah for the living to accompany the deceased to their graves. And we especially know that it's a mitzvah on the immediate family, children, siblings, spouses, parents, that they're the ones that are obligated to do the burial, and then they're obligated to sit shiva and all the other things we talked about in the previous weeks. Nevertheless, although they have this obligation, the Torah makes it clear that Kohanim, the priests of ancient Israel, were forbidden to come into even casual contact with the bodies of dead persons other than those of their closest of relatives, or even to share the same indoor space with them. Okay, this is a very strict rule in at least in ancient Israel, that you do, if you're a priest, if you're a Kohen, okay, you do not get in contact with other dead people unless it's your immediate family, as I explained, and you do the burial. Okay, so it means even not even being in the same shared space. So if you go in hospitals in Israel, you would there would be like special corridors for Kohanim, for priests, that they know that in those areas they don't move bodies or anything of that sort, and priests don't enter into cemeteries. Okay, I just mentioned that I got back from New York early yesterday from a funeral I conducted for my aunt, my dear aunt Menorah, which I actually want to dedicate this lesson in her memory. She was a very dear woman. Her children are Kohanim. She was married to a priest, and they were in the funeral, but their children, who were also Kohanim, were not obligated in the burial. Some of them did not actually go into the cemetery for that reason. And
So,
there's
Rabbi, if you're a female and you come from a family of
it
Kohanim,
only applies for male.
only for male.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
You're safe.
I'm safe. But it's interesting.
You have no excuses. That's really what it is.
Well,
Okay,
the female-
but in the conservative movement, there's a response by Rabbi Louis Epstein that was approved already in 1929 by the CJLS. Do you remember what the CJLS is? Committee on Jewish Laws and Standards. Okay, you remember I talked to you about that committee of the entire conservative movement. It meets in New York a few times a year, and it exists for many years, even 1929. And he says that the prohibitions today, they act as homage to homage to ancient tradition, rather than it should be looked as obedience to actual laws still in effect. Because what he's saying is, given that the Kohanim, the priests of today's Jewish community, they lack any genealogical evidence, okay, to back their claim that they are Kohanim. They say I'm a Kohen, like I'm a Levi, for example, and I am a real Levi. But if you ask me now, Rabbi Graetz, can you trace your genealogy all the way back to the Levites of the temple? Okay, I will, I would be embarrassed to admit that I am not able to do that. So how do I know that I'm a Levite? But my father told me.
Right.
And how does he know? Because his father told him, okay? Can we prove it? No, okay? So the same with all the priests. None of them could prove that.
23 and me.
Although don't tell Matt Klein, because he has a genealogy where he actually could prove it, I think till the 16th or 15th century, you could actually prove that there are priests all along in that lineage. And then there is some debate for like 300 years that it's harder for him to prove. And then he could track it back all the way to Ezra HaSofer, who was a priest in the times of the Bible. So that's very interesting. Okay, but it's a research. It could be debatable, obviously, but it's beautiful to see that research. Actually, I saw it once. So basically, even the great Maimonides, okay, is calling all the priests today as Kohanim by self-definition. I'm sorry, that's a little bit disturbing, that sound. Okay, so Kohanim by self-definition is what we are all, anyone that says today that they're a Kohen, and therefore, okay, there's no real certainty regarding their obligation not to be exposed and to be impure by exposing themselves to someone dead. And moreover, the laws regarding the obligation of Kohanim, priests, to avoid contamination with impurity clearly presupposes a means of restoring such an impure individual to a state of ritual purity, which means of restoring such an impure individual to a state of ritual purity, which means has not existed since the destruction of the temple. Okay, and finally, there's ample halachic justification for considering the impure individual exempt from the law forbidding contamination with impurity, because by virtue already of being in a state of impurity, such contamination cannot actually take place. Okay, so this is basically saying a very common rule in Jewish law that since the destruction of the temple, we are all impure, okay, including the priests. And if they will rebuild the third temple and we will want to worship in that temple, we will all have to purify ourselves. And how do you purify yourself? With the ashes of the para aduma, the red heifer, okay? That's mentioned in the book of Numbers, okay? And that you take the red heifer, if you remember that story there, you burn its ashes, you mix it with different water, etc., and you throw the water on the people in order to purify them. That process no longer exists since the destruction of the temple 2,000 years ago. And therefore, everyone here in the Jewish people, including the priests, are impure, and they were exposed to that impurity. So you can't add more impurity by exposing yourself to someone deceased, okay? So that should not be an issue as well, okay? Yes.
Do we know why during, in the Torah, we have all these ritual impurities? I mean, it's a statement, you shouldn't do this, you should do that, but what is the rationale behind all of this?
That's a very good question. It's definitely not the topic today here. But I think there was a different form of cleanliness and what was considered cleanliness in the temple, and a certain standard that was very important for the Torah to preserve.
But it tends to be ritual.
Yeah,
standard,
it is
not anything to do with.
But it also comes with cleanliness, also in the more spiritual way. You know, using white clothing and linens. So there are a lot of symbolics by that, but it's a good topic to dive into, but in a different time, because we're doing this now.
I was only thinking of it in terms of the funerals and the coloring and all the practices that they have to.
Right. Yeah. So they are exposed, as I said, every priest could be exposed directly to his deceased. But once they are exposed to someone who is not their immediate relative, then they become impure. But today we're all impure, so it doesn't really matter, is what the conservative movement is saying. And it's saying that today there's a sound basis for counseling the priest to avoid casual contact with the dead, out of respect for the laws that governed the priests in antiquity, but not to feel themselves bound by law never to attend a funeral, visit a grave, enter a hospital, attend a medical or a dental school, or visit sites of profound spiritual significance, like in Auschwitz, or in Rachel's tomb in Israel, or the tomb of the patriarchs in Hebron, etc. And nevertheless, the decision of any Kohen priest today to avoid attending funerals and entering cemeteries should be taken as an act of piety and allegiance to tradition and respected as such, but not more than that in that sense. Yes.
I'm sorry, do we know why we're all impure?
Yeah, because we're all exposed to dead people. Okay, we were all near them in one way or another, or we touched things that are impure, or there are different laws of impurity. It's very easy to become impure according to the Bible. So you touch, like certain bugs or something like that, you become impure. Yeah.
Two things.
And there's no way to purify you since the time of the temple, as I explained with the red heifer. Yeah,
That's one of the things. It's heifer, by the way.
heifer. Oh, sorry.
So did
That's a cow.
they purify millions of people with a one heifer?
That's an interesting question. Apparently they did, and they had more than one. It was very rare. It was very hard to find, but they were like very careful with it. It was like a very expensive.
I thought that was really only for the Kohanim. I didn't realize it was all the people.
It was for the Kohanim, but they used it also for people who got out of being Metzorah, out of being.
Well, yeah, if they had something, but what about just an average Joe who's a farmer and today's a computer operator? And
No, but if they would want to go to the temple, they would be able to go up to a certain point, but they would also have to like bathe in the mikveh. So there are different wet forms of getting out of your impurity.
that's what I thought the mikvah
Okay.
does, but
Right.
why are they labeling all of us now as impure? That part I don't understand. What is the purpose of that?
The purpose of that is really to say that if we would rebuild the temple again, everyone that wants to go into the temple would have to purify themselves. There's also some sacrifices that you cannot do unless more than 51% of the people of Israel are pure. There are different laws that have to do with public sacrifices. It's complicated. It's a topic. It's very complicated.
We were never purified. I mean, since the temple has been gone, we have never been purified. There's no red heifer, there's no ritual.
That's true for the Kohanim. That's not true. People go to the mikvah, people do all kinds of stuff.
No.
And that's enough vehicle.
So it's so complicated, but there are different levels of impurity. There's tumat met, okay, being impure,
With the dead person.
contact with the dead, and there's just impurity. Let's say a woman that goes to the mikveh after her menstruation,
Right,
she is pure to be with her husband,
right.
okay, but she's not pure to go to the temple. It's like different levels of impurity.
Different
Okay.
depths to the mikveh.
Hmm?
Maybe different depths to the.
No, it has nothing to do with the depth. Okay, and there's only one depth to the mikveh.
All right, one other question. I have been
Mm.
told, and I don't even remember who told me, that before the Holocaust, there was never a rule against cremation.
Wait, we didn't even talk about cremation.
I
We're
know.
starting now about cremation.
Oh, good.
But Robert has a lot.
Cremation and disinterment. Okay, you're very active.
I'm psychic, but I'm
So
impure.
Judaism regards the human body as a sacred trust from God that none has the right to desecrate or destroy. And this has been the view of Judaism since ancient times. Okay, I'm again reading the sort of like the conservative movement. It's an opinion of one rabbi that wrote it, but it's like a big editorial group. This might be controversial, maybe. It might not be that everyone here in this room agrees, but I want to like at least read it so we know what kind of like the, I don't know if official position, but the position of the conservative, one main position in the conservative movement. Therefore, cremation, considered the ultimate expression of disrespect to the dead, is absolutely forbidden in all instances. In the light of the Shoah, in the course of which millions of Jews were murdered and their bodies burned to ash, the practice has taken on a new air of repulsiveness. Normally, cremated remains, occasionally called cremains, are not buried in a Jewish cemetery. There are, however, certain exceptions to this rule. For instance, in the cases of families who brought the cremated remains of beloved family members with them when they left the former Soviet Union, okay, which was a very common custom back there, most rabbis, noting the complete repression of Jewish tradition under the communists and the lack of an alternative to cremation, have agreed that those remained be buried in dignified Jewish graves. Okay, so here's like already exception one. More delicate is the situation that ensues when Jewish individuals leave specific instructions to their heirs that they wish to be cremated, often noting explicitly that they are aware of the fact that this is forbidden and they wish their bodies to be cremated nevertheless. The family of such individuals should be informed that they are not duty-bound to obey the wishes of their parents in this matter, since cremation is explicitly forbidden under Jewish law, and that Jewish tradition is completely clear that parents do not have the authority to instruct their children to violate halakha, the Jewish law. Okay, so here's a debate. In this way, every effort should be made to discourage cremation if the heirs feel, however, that they cannot go against the specific instructions of an otherwise lucid, now deceased parent. Such cremated remains may be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Okay, so that's exception number two, that if the parent insists, you have to cremate me, even though they should be discouraged, and even though even the children could be told, you do not have to honor their wishes, because it's like if like if a parent would tell me you have to eat pork, okay, I could disobey them. So because even though it goes against the commandment, the fifth commandment of honoring your mother and father, okay, that's also a command. There's so two commandments in conflict. You don't you sort of like don't honor one commandment in order to fulfill the other commandment. Okay,
Rabbi.
So, but even in that, even if the person says no, I'm sorry, I have to honor my parents' wishes for cremation. So then the rabbi is permitted to perform this ceremony. I just want to finish reading this. This validates the ancient principle that the wishes of the dead are to be considered a sacred trust by the living, okay? And I wanted to actually bring you the very interesting quote from BT is Bavli Talmud. Ta'anit is the name of the tractate. It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who said, it is a mitzvah to fulfill the statement of the dead. Okay, this entire Baraita can be explained based on a principle that appears in the Mishnah. In all cases, one should try to execute the wishes of the deceased. Okay, so the wishes of the deceased sort of like have an extra weight to them. Again, not every wish, okay, but it has some extra weight to it. So that's why the passage here encourages that. Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
No, Larry's waiting.
Does that, when we say cremation, does that apply to a positive activity about the people versus, let's say, someone dies in a house fire, or there something happens out in the countryside or something, and there's really hardly anything in the way of remains. They essentially have been cremated, but are the two the same?
No.
Do you treat it differently?
No.
No, you don't. Well, you would in a way. This is like after fact. It's nothing you can do. But you're sort of like faced with this situation. So there's no really different way in treating this,
Well, there
okay?
is, Rabbi, because they said that
Yeah.
those that were burned, and I'm gonna use the word burned on purpose, in Russia, without a choice, they were invited. I would consider that a person who was in a fire and was burned, and again, I'm using the word
Right.
burned, not cremated, had no choice. They did not
Right,
violate
right.
anything. I
Right.
think they would bury them. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
because it's
yeah.
under that, same
Yeah,
thing,
for
people who
sure.
were burned in the Holocaust. they were
Yes.
burned.
But in such a way that precludes any possibility of the Jewish community appearing to condone a decision that tradition considers abhorrent and which the Shoah renders incomprehensible. A response by Rabbi Morris Shapiro, permitting wide rabbinic discretion in dealing with issues relating to cremation and the disposition of cremated remains, was adopted by the CJLS in 1986. So anyone that wants to read more about that, I will email you this specifically. Yes?
Question. My husband is a veteran. And there is a decision made that he could be cremated. And there is a crypt at the West Side Veterans Cemetery. And that they would have a Jewish star on it. And that they could have a crypt for him and for me. I never wanted to be cremated, but he has always wanted to be cremated. So I'm debating right now, do I want to be cremated and put in a crypt with a Jewish star on it on a wall in the Veterans Cemetery on the West Side? It's something that we're working on in our trust right now.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards joining my husband in our little cremation crypt. I've never been a really overly religious Jew. I was raised Reformed, but I had a feeling that I was going to come back to life and I was going to preserve my brain or whatever. I wasn't going to let him burn me. But now I think I will. Am I going to be damned? I don't know.
Well, I don't know what happens after life.
I
Okay,
like
so
the Mishnah
I don't
thing
know.
that said
Yeah.
that.
Is it like the Yigdal that the dead rise again or whatever?
Well, there is, but part of that thinking is, the rising from the dead, but it's just the Jewish law and tradition. So when I am asked, this is what I tell people, and if it's after fact, it's after fact. If I'm asked now while someone is alive, so this is what I would tell them and advise them, is to go according to the customs that Jews have been doing for centuries. Okay,
So what if a person,
does that answer the question?
Well, yes and no. I like the 1980, whatever it was, one that said we could do it. And I'll probably do it only because I'm cheap and I saw how much a coffin costs and how much silence now at Green Hills, and I didn't sign up for that either.
I'm not. I think there's also a cost for that as well. Oh, but you're
Not
saying,
with the
okay, because
VA.
he's a
The VA
veteran.
would pick us up at the hospital, take us, cremate
Yeah.
us, put us in the crypt, and we could have a little Jewish star on it. And we could even have probably a 21-gun salute and a service.
Yeah,
And I know that
And-
several
and-
years
and
ago.
it could be a reform rabbi that would also do the service. That's
It
also
was
okay.
also, at a few years back, friends of mine died and were cremated. And then they had a celebration of life here at the synagogue with the former rabbi. Would that be possible?
We did that. We also did that here when I was here, the rabbi. Okay, but it was very clear that I did not afterwards attend
No, you didn't have to go to the
the
cremation.
to the cremation or the ceremony in the
Installation.
cemetery. But if someone passes away and they want to have a ceremony of celebration of life here, we would do that, but without the remains of the body, with no
That
urn
answers my question.
inside or anything.
I feel better. I could have.
So,
a
so you
that.
have a coffin here or no?
No,
No coffin,
No,
nothing,
No.
just
Just
a
a service,
service.
just a service,
so if a
like
person
we
wants to
do
be
for anyone.
I feel
cremated,
better.
let's say.
We don't,
a non-practicing Jew?
what I want to say is like, we don't put someone in cherem, we don't put someone in like outcast them out of the community for doing that. We discourage it. We're not, for it, but we also, we also discourage people from eating non-kosher. Okay, and we have people in our community that don't eat kosher, and they come to the community and they're prominent members. I'm half joking because I think 95% of the community doesn't eat kosher. Okay, but they're all welcome, and they're all, but if they ask me, Rabbi, can I eat, bacon and ham? And, and is it okay in terms of Judaism? I would say no, absolutely not. Okay.
Listen, I grew up with
So-
bacon in my house.
But not everyone does what the
not
rabbi
anything
says,
else.
even my family,
My
most people
parents
don't do
were
what I
both
say.
Orthodox.
Right?
My parents were both brought up Orthodox. We ate bacon in our house. No pork, no shrimp, no lobster.
Okay,
Nothing
wait,
else.
but we're digressing, okay.
So, okay, then.
yeah, I'm
person
sorry.
Says they intend to be cremated, and then the rabbi comes along and says, no, according to Jewish law, they have to be buried, and the rabbi goes ahead and buries them, that's okay?
No, there's no burial for that.
No, it's gotta
Okay, because the human body
because I
must,
picked on it.
okay, because the human body must in all instances be treated with respect and dignity. Exhumation and reburial are also forbidden under almost all circumstances. The Committee on Jewish Law and Standards ruled, however, that under certain specific conditions, it may be permissible to disinter or rebury, disinter or rebury a body elsewhere. Okay, if a deceased individual is buried in the wrong grave, for example, the body may be exhumed and reburied in the proper place. This is especially so if the grave in which the individual was buried actually belongs to someone else.
Right.
The immediate family members should regard the day of reburial as akin to the original day of burial by rendering their garments, putting that ribbon, and then by observing all the laws of mourning until evening. So for one day, you observe like the laws of the Shiva. And similarly, if there is a family plot in which a deceased was meant to be buried, the body may be moved to that plot if it was accidentally interred elsewhere. And if there's a danger that the grave might be desecrated or vandalized, the body may be moved to a more secure location. Also, if a Jew was inadvertently buried in a non-Jewish cemetery, the body may be moved to a Jewish cemetery. And in all cases of reburial, the body must be handled with great respect, and a one-day period of mourning should be observed. Also, people want to be buried in the land of Israel, okay, could be buried on a temporary base here, and then moved to the land of Israel when the day comes. So, which is by the way, what happened with the remaining body of Herzl. Okay, Herzl, the founder of the Zionist movement, when he passed away in 1903, he put in his will, one day when the Jewish state of Israel will be established, as he foreseen in his amazing vision of Zionism, I want my remains to be brought to Israel. And indeed, I think it was 1950 or 1951, okay, that the Israeli government voted to remove his bones from Vienna, where he was buried. I think it was in Vienna, and to be buried on Mount Herzl. Okay, and today Mount Herzl in Jerusalem is where Herzl is buried, but also all the soldiers that gave their lives for the state of Israel are buried as well, and you can see the beautiful view of Jerusalem from his grave.
He wanted to have Africa as the homeland for the Jews. If Africa had ended up as the homeland, he would have been buried there in Africa?
No. He meant in the state of Israel.
Okay.
He wanted it. He didn't want Uganda to be the state of
Okay.
Israel. That was a temporary.
So that was a
solution.
temporary move then?
Yeah,
Right.
no, that's absolutely wrong. Basically, what we see here is that this is also the issue we have with greenhouse today, okay, that we're building a third section and we might have to have it's only going to be ready in a few months from now. So in the meanwhile, if people pass away, they will be buried in temporary mausoleums, which is, don't ask me about that because that's our next topic. And then sorry, what happened here? Okay, I assume guys on the Zoom could still see the could still see it, right? You could see us. Today was a Zoom, it's going crazy.
My wife is in heart. I'd say my wife is in heart shalom too. Yeah.
Okay,
Next.
okay, now mausoleum. Yes, but you wanted to ask something, Jerry?
Yes, you did not mention those Jewish soldiers that were killed in whatever battle, who were interred in the vicinity of the battle for the by graves, by the people who run the graves and reclamation of bodies after a battle. Being moved to a Jewish cemetery or
That's also
ground.
permissible. That is that's true, and that's a very good. And actually, my father, in the army in the Yom Kippur War, 1973, he actually buried a lot of soldiers in a temporary grave at Sinai, and then they moved after the war. They moved them to their homes to be buried properly. And it even happened now after October 7th, sadly. Yes.
Ask about organ donation.
Yes, we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay.
Rabbi, what are the exceptions with regard to anything legal such as murder? Something to do with those kinds of activities where they may need to.
That's autopsies and all. We'll talk about that in a
That's
moment.
later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Mausoleums. Okay. There's a question that I was asked, and also the conservative movement was asked: may a mausoleum be used for Jewish burial? Okay.
Can you describe what is a mausoleum?
Okay, that's a very good question. Okay. Mausoleum.
There's a picture right there
Yeah.
behind you.
Okay, the term mausoleum originally, in fact, referred to the tomb of King Mausoleus of Caria, erected by Queen. Did I not pronounce it?
No, it's okay.
Created by Queen Artemisia at Halicarnassus about 350 BCE.
Sounds great.
Which was considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. Okay, in more modern times, it has come to denote a structure for multiple above ground interments. Okay, mausoleums are essentially constructed of granite with marble interiors. Today, because of the growing demand for this type of interment, it has become economical to produce prefabricated mausoleums. The mausoleum may be built for a single family to accommodate 8 to 10 bodies, and is found in many old Jewish cemeteries as well. And today, there are even elevators in mausoleums that are very, very big. There are crypts that are arranged in a locker style, most often open into a large central hall, but may also open to outdoors. And central halls are more frequently heated in the winter and air conditioned during the summer to afford comfort and convenience at any time of the year, which of visitors. Bodies prepared for burial in a crypt may or may not be embalmed, although you don't do that in Judaism, and then are placed in a casket, which in turn is put into a zinc liner and then inserted into the locker-like crypt. The crypt is then permanently sealed with a shutter. A memorial plaque may be placed on the shutter. Each crypt is vented both upward and downward, so that fluids and gases from the decomposing bodies may escape, thus avoiding the possibility of an explosion. And also, all the bad odors that also come with that. So as you can see here in the right picture, okay, this is from Jerusalem, from archaeological excavations that were found there, and you can actually see it's very interesting, right? You see,
But these were caves, that's why I was confused, so.
okay, but these are also, they're not completely attached to the ground, and this is part of the issue that there's in the Jewish tradition, it says, from the ground you came, from the ground you shall return, right? This today is in Israel, okay? The mausoleums that are also built, and there was a big debate even in Israel if they are kosher or not kosher. Some rabbis said no, it's absolutely not kosher, but even some Orthodox rabbis said no, it is possible, okay, because there's just no room anymore to bury people, and it's very expensive land, especially in Israel, which is like such a small country.
Biblically, they buried in caves.
In caves, and the
Yeah,
right
so this
part
is the
looks like a
cave. This is the
right.
cave burial, okay?
Yeah, the right
But-
part was the cave.
And
that's right.
but in the past, they would put the bones here in the cave and the bodies in the cave, and after a year or so, when the body would decompose, they would just take the bones and put them in like a family burial plot, okay? But today, this is the more modern mausoleums in Israel, and they are somehow connected to the ground, or on the upper ones, there is dirt, okay, that is put from the ground and in some way connects the person, okay? So I'll be very happy to send you all the materials on burial in mausoleums. And although it is not encouraged in Judaism, okay, it's not prohibited like cremation, but it is not recommended either, okay? But it says that if there is if it's done, it's better to somehow attach it to the ground, okay? It's like on the back of a mountain, okay? So you would like build it, so each of the graves would somehow be attached to the ground. That's the best. And even though it's like only like the feet of the deceased, right? Because it's like it's all put in the ground. If that's not possible, and there's a need that has to be dirt from the ground laid inside the coffin and also outside, okay, as much as possible. Sometimes it's not a lot, but it's symbolic. And also needs to be separated from the non-Jewish mausoleums, okay? It needs to be like a designated Jewish area.
There must be, geography plays a point. So for instance, around New Orleans and Louisiana, I think they bury almost everybody above ground because it's always flooded. I don't know what it's like in Florida
God, yeah.
too. So there must be,
Oh, interesting.
do something with it.
So the Jews have to go according to the laws,
So in olden days, was it called catacombs? It's not like really a mausoleum.
No, that's different.
Yeah, it's not, it's like, I don't know if it was like catacombs.
The catacombs are the same burial ground, they're caves, basically,
Yeah,
and with a cutout. I'm walking,
And-
and I walked through these.
Yes,
and one of the rabbis writes that, so if people nevertheless insist on a mausoleum burial, some sort of earth should be put into the coffin, and also outside of the coffin, as was written by different rabbis. Okay, continuing. Autopsies and organ donations, okay? That's on page 284. Suicide is strictly forbidden by Jewish law. Okay, so don't do it. Therefore, suicides have traditionally been denied burial rights in a Jewish cemetery. Okay, so if you
Yeah.
commit suicide in Judaism, you do not get buried. However, okay, as rabbis have come to better understand what it means for an individual to take his or her own life, leniency in this regard has become far more normal than undue stringency. So, in order to be a confirmed suicide, there must be at least two witnesses to the act. More to the point, the deceased must have alerted them in advance that suicide was being planned and would occur. Okay, so you would have to take two witnesses, okay, and tell them, you are my witnesses now, and I'm committed suicide out of my own free will. And although you're discouraging me, I'm still doing this, I'm planning this, and it's my decision. Okay. So, and it can't just be a video. Okay. It has to be,
It sounds like
they're
Right.
almost making it impossible.
right, it sounds like
They
the
have
same
to.
thing they approached capital punishment back in the
Right.
day. They put so
Exactly.
many restrictions on it.
Very, very restricted. So the act itself must be seen as a formal, intentional repudiation of God's gift to life, and not an act of despair, depression, or despondency. So I would also have to tell the witnesses, they would tell me, it is forbidden by Judaism, and it's like going against God who gave you life. And I would have to say, yes, I know, and I'm deliberately doing it to upset all of you and God. Okay.
Dear.
So, okay, and then you would also have to, even then, you would also even have to assume that, let's say someone jumps off the building, that they didn't regret the last moment. Okay, so it's almost like making it impossible to consider something a suicide, because that in Judaism, the notion that life is so precious that everyone who's value it, even someone who's very depressed and would take his life in a or someone who's very ill, even at that last moment, it was like, I wish I would be alive, or something like that. Okay. So in that regard, they sort of like create a framework where you are allowed to bury someone who committed suicide in that regard, unless they say, I don't want to be buried in a Jewish plot. So you would have to honor their decision. But that is so rare. And it was really done because they didn't want to embarrass families, okay? That if someone would commit suicide and then you would bury them sort of like outside of the Jewish cemetery, everyone else in the community would be buried in a Jewish cemetery, and you bury that person specifically outside, and then sort of like outcast him. That would be embarrassing for the families, and they wanted to prevent that as well. So Judaism was sort of like considerate of the family, the remaining family after that. Some people might say, wait, but we need to respect that if that's someone's wishes, etc. But this is the point of view of Judaism. I understand these other voices that people say, but again, I've been asked a few times, like, what is the position of Judaism on suicide? And it is forbidden. It is true. There are always different exceptions, right? Like King Saul, when he was almost about to die in battle, and he was surrounded by the Philistines, who were about to take his body or to take him wounded and make a spectacle out of him. Told the boy that was carrying his sword, kill me, okay? And those guys said, I'm not going to kill the king of Israel, okay, who's anointed by the prophets, by God. So he said, kill me anyhow, okay, and he did that to honor his wishes. So there's some exceptions. I think Saul fell on his sword, on his own sword. I have to go back to the story again, but there's some exceptions, I guess, to that. And autopsies and and organ donations. So although halakha, Jewish law, does not permit generally autopsies, understanding that these might be dishonoring the dead and the integrity of the corpse. There are, however, some exceptions. First of all, if the local authorities require an autopsy, when there's like a suspicious of foul play or in a public health emergency, then Jewish law permits it. Okay, so it's not forbidden completely. Or when an autopsy could conceivably help save another person's life. For example, if there's a disease threatening the members of a certain family, and they want to make an autopsy to see what's wrong with with the genes maybe of that, and also it would also mean if you donate your body to science to see if there's any to advance science, so this would improve people's lives as well. So that is also permissible to that. Actually, my aunt Menorah that I mentioned before was part of like a research that you take like brain cells from your brain after your death within a few hours. So her body was taken first to a special place at Columbia University. They did whatever they had to. It wasn't a full autopsy, but they did whatever they had to do, and then returned the body to the family for burial.
And the sample too?
Hmm?
And the sample as well?
No, I think they kept the sample. Okay. The attempt should be as much of the organs to be put back and buried with the person, but that's not always possible, and it is permissible, at least in the conservative movement.
So in the.
Oh, and this also the same goes for organ transplants that could save life, and it is it's considered a big mitzvah to donate one's organs to save other lives.
The Orthodox feel the same way on that.
It didn't start off today. More and more Orthodox rabbis permit that, but there is sort of like a common belief that it shouldn't be done. So there's like different Jewish organizations that are trying to fight these pre-notions and preconceptions that are misguided, and to tell them it is permissible according to Jewish law, and not only it's permissible, it's a mitzvah. It should be encouraged. Because people feel like if not the whole body is intact, it's not the right thing, etc. So it's a lot of work to work with people and convince them. I encourage everyone to do that. So I'm also saying on the recording, it's a very important mitzvah, which I highly encourage everyone to be signed on a donor organ card, which I am as well. Yes.
After this, will there be a subsequent discussion about the Jewish perspective on the afterlife?
Yes, not at this point.
No.
But yeah.
So an autopsy would be okay for heart research purposes. A person died, they
Yeah.
don't know why, and they're doing heart research so that other members of the family can be better off medically speaking.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or the people in total?
Or the science in general.
Rabbi, but historically,
Yeah.
tell me if I'm wrong, but rabbis have been a part of evolution and change of Jewish law throughout history. So this all seems to be just a normal part of, you've got new experiences, new circumstances, and you have to deal with it.
Well, you're basically, advocating the point of view of the conservative movement, okay? But in the Orthodox world, they don't always like these changes, okay? Which is a little bit hypocritical sometimes, because they do use doctors and they do use medicine, and they do benefit from the research on non-Jewish bodies, right?
Right.
So to say that Jews can't participate, it is problematic in that sense. I mean, you could still argue, there's just 16 million Jews, and there are billions of of non-Jews, but it is problematic in that sense. Not to mention that you also want to contribute to this research of Jewish genes, right? Because there are all these Jewish diseases that Ashkenazi Jews have, and some Sephardi Jews, and like you want to get down to the origins of that.
Fragile X,
And if you-
Tay-Sachs, all those.
Yeah, if you want to get into the
Oceans.
origins of these things. So I agree with you, but but there are more traditionalist voices out there.
Are you going to touch on the Shekhinah as far as the resurrection is concerned?
Yeah, I might talk about like the different opinions about life after death and resurrection of the dead, and reincarnation. I might not. It's not my favorite topic. I don't. I don't like speculating too much, and I haven't been there. I might do the course after
After you've done it.
Yeah, but I want to end about talking about a burial of non-Jewish spouses, which is also a very important question that came up in the 20th and 21st century, but it started already in the 19th century, that question. But it's interesting, it's even in the times of the Mishnah and the Talmud. Not that there was so much intermarriage, but there was a question, can he bury Jews and non-Jews, okay? And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So there's no specific prohibition in the entire Bible dealing with burying non-Jews together with Jews. So first of all, in the Bible, there's no prohibition. The history of the development of Jewish communal cemeteries is obscure, but around the 19th century, they became part of general community cemeteries for all religions, and standards were set to distinguish Jewish burial grounds from general burial grounds, okay? So the more distinct, fenced cemeteries is more a modern phenomena. And the Talmud says, okay, it has a statement that deals with the burial of non-Jews together with Jews. Non-Jews, okay, this is here, non-Jews may be buried with Jewish dead so that we follow the way of peace. Okay, mipnei darkei shalom. Okay, so standing by itself, the statement at the very least permits Jews to be involved in the burial of non-Jewish bodies. It might also mean that it is permitted to bury non-Jews together with Jews. Okay, so if we had those caves that I showed you the photo before, okay, so in cave number 1 here, okay, there would be a Jewish family, and maybe in cave number 4 here, you would put like a non-Jewish family, okay, like the bones or whatever it is, whatever it would be. Okay, it wasn't as clear borders like it was today.
Well, Rabbi, I don't know what it was like in Europe, but typically in the US, wasn't it that synagogues would create Jewish cemeteries when the needs?
Well, it was more in the 19th century. This
Yeah,
is what
19th century.
but there's a big debate on this passage in the Talmud that I just read to you, that that non-Jews may be buried with Jews. And some rabbis say, no, that doesn't mean actually being buried, but that Jews can attend to the burial needs of non-Jews. That is permissible, which is interesting itself. So the rabbis go back and forth in debate, and the Bach, which is one of the authorities in the 17th century in Poland, returns to the original Talmudic statement and permits the burial of non-Jews together with Jews in the same courtyard. And in the conservative movement, okay, the conclusion is 1. Okay, do you see this? 1, we must be sensitive to the commitments that were made with those who have already been buried under the assumption that only Jews would be buried with them. Okay, so if we want to come and bury non-Jews with Jews, we need to be careful, because there's some Jews that are buried here that they know to begin with that this is a Jewish cemetery. This is a Jewish plot. So if we're now changing the rules, okay, without asking them, and we can't ask them because they're dead, or without asking their families, we're sort of like dishonoring the commitment we made to them, right? So that has to be taken into account. Hence, we recommend the creation of mixed burial sections in Jewish cemeteries where non-Jewish spouses and children may be buried alongside Jews. The mixed section should be separated from the rest of the cemetery by a path, a road, or a sidewalk of 4 amot, which is 1.9 to about 2.3 meters wide, okay? So in Green Hills, for example, the Jewish plot allows the burial of non-Jewish spouses, okay? And everyone knows it to begin with. So if you don't want to be buried next to a non-Jewish spouse of someone else, okay, you could go to a different Jewish cemetery in Los Angeles, okay?
You mean some of the others are more strict, you're saying?
Oh, yeah. Some of the others are more strict. And why?
They would say, no, you can't be buried there.
In other Jewish cemeteries, each cemetery has its own rule. I don't know.
Well, some cemeteries have multiple sections about a Jewish section, a Catholic section.
Right, that's what we have in Green Hills, okay? That's not the preferred situation. The preferred situation would be to have like an only Jewish cemetery. But even then, you would have to deal with the question of non-Jewish spouse. You also need a room for them. So what they're suggesting here, I think this is more based on the New York reality, is that you would have in the Jewish cemetery, you would have like a section that is like a mixed burial section, but it would be there would be 4 amot, which is that 1.9 or 2.3 meters, which is sort of like the halachic, the Jewish law requirement for a separation between like a Jewish and a non-Jewish grave. Okay, so at Green Hills, that's exactly what we have. We have a Jewish area which we consecrated in a special ceremony many years ago, and we're going to do this again when we have Green Hills 3, and we're going to invite you to please come and participate there because we're going to need a minyan, and we're going to do a ceremony where we're consecrate that area as Jewish, and we're going to make sure that it has 4 amot, the 1.9, 2.3 meters, aside from the non-Jewish sections.
So
okay?
the Har Shalom 2 has the Har Amot, the 2.3 meters separation for the non-Jews and
from the non-Jewish from the Catholic place.
Right.
But it always allowed Jews and non-Jews spouses to be buried together. Okay. But that's based on the notion that you are allowed to bury Jews, like what I said before, right? There's
nothing in the Bible that says that
non-Jews may be buried with Jews dead, so that the follow ways of peace. Okay.
The Bible doesn't say anything about a Jew and a non-Jew who are married, they can't be buried together, right?
They can be together. They
Right.
can be buried together.
Right.
Okay. Following the tour of the Beit Yosef and the Bach and the Aruch HaShulchan, it is permitted for rabbis to attend and officiate at the funerals of non-Jewish spouses and children. The funeral ceremony should be conducted by Jewish clergy and not contain any non-Jewish ritual. Okay, so I don't know what are the non-Jewish rituals, but if the non-Jewish spouse wants to be buried with their Jewish husband or wife, they can be done, but not a priest cannot officiate, and only Jewish parts could be said in the ceremony. The ceremony may include Psalm 23, a eulogy, and other appropriately worded prayers as determined by the local rabbi. If there are surviving Jewish family members, they may recite the Kaddish, and the tombstone also should not have non-Jewish religious symbols engraved on it. So the rule in Green Hills and the Har Shalom sections is only Jewish symbols. So even if it's like a non-Jewish spouse, and they don't want a symbol, so it could be without a symbol, but it cannot have a cross or anything of that sort.
Crescent.
Okay, or a crescent or anything like that. Okay.
Really?
Yes.
When I found one set of my grandparents in a cemetery in Brooklyn, I noticed that it was common, and I don't know whether it goes back to the 19th century, but they buried children separate from adults, so they would be like, you'd see these little tombstones.
Small graves,
Small,
small size
uh-huh.
graves.
Is there some kind of tradition behind that, or?
Is that what is-
No, I don't,
I can tell you what it
Yeah.
is, because I buried a child.
uh-huh,
It's economics. They make the children plots.
Mhm.
They will not bury a child in the, because the grave, that's all prepared ahead of time.
Right.
And it's very big, and for the children, it's very small. So they have it like, here are the children
Mhm.
and the adults are here.
Okay.
It's really economics.
Hmm.
And both of them are Jewish, so my son is buried here and my husband's buried here. And we bought it many, and my parents are buried next to him. It's
Okay.
really weird. And you cannot,
That makes sense. I
It's
just didn't know what
economics.
tradition
It's
may have been
economics.
behind it.
it's
yeah.
cemetery economics.
Okay, so as I said, I wanted to, dedicate this session, the last session on burial to my aunt, Menorah Rotenberg. I want to also please say a Kaddish. I see actually my mother and sister joined us, so maybe they'll want to say Kaddish as well at the end of this session. And let me